Good morning. Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. We just finished introducing ourselves here on our Zoom group, and we're going to introduce Elizabeth Wood this morning, who's going to speak for us. I'm so delighted to have her on. She's amazing. I I had the awesome opportunity to hang out with her when we went to Mom Congress in 2019, and I think that's one of my favorite things ever. So we got to know each other really well and talked about all the things that were really important to us. And I feel like since then I feel like we are on the same wavelength. So I'm just so delighted to have her here. She's got such wonderful ideas and connections and energy. So thank you for being here, Elizabeth. So glad to have you. I'll introduce you. So Elizabeth Wood is one of the founders and current force behind Matrescence, Fourth Trimester Planning and Support. Serving valley-wide and sometimes internationally, Matrescence guides expectant moms and their families through the fourth trimester planning process, placing moms' emotional and physical recovery needs at the center. So delighted to have you, and I will turn it on over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jenny and Sarah and Kendra and Robin and Jill and all of the fourth trimester representatives that are here. Thanks for inviting me to be one of the speakers for your West Valley meetup. I think it's amazing. You guys just keep growing, started East, West Valley, and Navajo's coming along too. So good job. I'm just so impressed always at the amount of energy and work that you and your volunteers bring to it. And I'm happy to also be able to share, hopefully it's okay, Jenny, that I'm also joining the volunteer ranks with fourth trimester and starting to help out too. So that just really fills my heart even more. So yeah, that's great. Thanks everybody for being here. I'm just so appreciative that we as women can gather, because I truly believe that gathering, we are each other's best medicine. And on those days where it's just our turn to have a rough day, I feel like one of the things that helps make me feel more vibrant is actually connecting with another human that can just sit with me and listen and just hear whatever frustration or, mom disaster has happened to me in that day. And so I think that's probably one of my top ones. And then I would also have to second, just because I'm an athlete, always has been, same as Amy, as she shared her workouts, like that is my one time in the day where there are no children around and I just get to do me. And so that is like the truest version of myself, is just being able to spend time in whatever form that is. So yeah. Jenny, I don't know if you guys gave me, could you give me permission to be able to share my screen for this?
There you go.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So I just wanted to start off with a picture today. It's going to come up as myself because I'm on the wrong slide, but I'll get off that because no one wants to see more of me. But so I'm here, and I just think this is such an important quote. I love this picture because I would love to hear in the chat box there your comments or your reactions when you look at this photo. What do you see? And then combining it with the words of, when a baby is born, so is a mother. And so for me, my own personal feelings on this is like, I became a mom when I was about 38 years old. I had well established my career and I thought I was in this good place, and I had a baby and boom, just rocked my world 100%. And so in doing so, it was definitely a time that was wobbly and uncomfortable. And there were days where I could not find any vibrancy in anything I did. And it's been certainly a learning experience for me. So one of the things I'm the most passionate about is coming and speaking to anyone who will listen to me to try to raise more awareness, because I feel like when we know better, we can do better. And I feel like there's this fallacy that exists around our culture, which says like, once you become a mom, that's like it. And all of a sudden, all these problems with your body, or like your body's just going to be a lemon from then on, or you're always going to be a certain way. And that is so far from the truth. And so that's what I love to focus our conversation on. I prefer to do this in a give and take sort of style. And so I have, we'll see how coordinated I can be. I might do some polling questions, or I might just pop up. I have some slides that I use as backup in case I was not going to be able to multitask, which is often the case. So, but we'll do a fun, hopefully quiz sort of style. I would love for you guys to participate as much as you can using the chat box to kind of answer questions. And all of these 4 topics that we're going to kind of brush over today, and we can spend as much time with them as we want to, or as we're curious in. All of those 4 topics are kind of these common but not normal things. And so as a society, we have decided that to normalize things that are really not normal. And so with that, that's kind of the theme that you'll see kind of interwoven between these 4 topics, and they're from all different sections of motherhood. And so before I start, I always like to start with these. So I want to see the comments. I can't see them right there. Do Sarah or Jenny, do you guys want to throw some up?
I can read them for you. I don't know if I know how to throw them up anywhere, but
It's okay.
I can read them for you. So Kelly said, reminds me of how when a baby is born, the focus shifts from the pregnant, expectant mom to the baby, and the mom is no longer the focus or priority. Yeah, and several people said totally agree. And Kelly also said the quote made me think of the word vulnerable. And Robin said, for some reason, I noticed how the focus of the pic is on the baby. Beautiful photo. And I said, yeah, the focus is totally on the baby and the mom is no longer important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely. You guys nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. And I feel like that is one of the biggest things about becoming a mother, at least in my experience, was when you're pregnant, everybody, I mean, strangers want to touch your belly. Good Lord. Like you have people that are coming out of the woodwork to like just be near you because you're carrying a baby. And then all of a sudden you have the baby and everything, all that attention shifts to baby, baby, baby. And I feel like we can get really lost in that. We can feel really lost and left out because no one's asking about us when we're the one who is going through this massive transition called motherhood, or called, there's actually a word for it, matrescence. And that's why I chose to name my company Matrescence. And that's why I always, when I get a chance, want to tell the definition of the word, because I feel like when we can name it, we can kind of tame it. And this is an example of that. So matrescence rhymes with adolescence, right? And if we all think back to our adolescence, again, chat box would be useful here. What sort of memories do you kind of bring up that are parallel between adolescence and matrescence, or the process of mother becoming? So they're both transition time periods where we're going from, in adolescence, we're going from a child to an adult, right? And so we recognize that with the word adolescence. And so there was an anthropologist, as you guys are filling in your chat experiences of, or chat reactions to like, what are the similarities between adolescence and matrescence? There was an anthropologist that was studying breastfeeding, actually. And she, in the process of being a breastfeeding anthropologist, she was one of the first women that was allowed in these women care spaces, because the men anthropologists in a lot of the traditional cultures weren't allowed. And so she got this full view of all of what encompasses these first few days, weeks, months, this matrescence journey. And she decided we needed a word for it, because in all 100+ cultures that she studied around the world, she saw these postpartum care traditions that were there to help that mother come back into focus. It wasn't the focus shifting to the baby, it was the mom, because they knew when mom was well, baby would be well. And so she wanted to recognize and acknowledge this huge transition that we all go through. And it doesn't happen at the moment of birth. It's not like, boom, you got a baby and all of a sudden you're a mom, right? Like, yeah, you get the name of mom maybe at that moment, but there's this huge, every time you have a baby, there's this self-reckoning and this acknowledgement of change, this massive life identity transition, which occurs for, I think, most all of us, is what I would say. So I'll pause there. What sort of reactions do we have? I'm gonna stop sharing this so I can see those chats too. It looks, you guys want to read them? I love not hearing myself. So Jenny, chime on in, please read them. You did great.
Okay, if you want me to read them, that's fine. Let's see. Yeah, Joanne said, one good part of being pregnant during a pandemic, not one single person touched my belly. It's fascinating. I would not have thought that, but that makes sense. Yes.
Silver lining.
And then Robin said, emotions, lots of them. Savannah said, full of emotions. Kendra said, awkwardness, loss of identity. Sarah, emotional highs and lows. Kelly said, needing a lot of guidance in life. Jill said, lots of confusion and not feeling like myself. Sarah said, not knowing who you are and needing validation. I said, acne, changing body, hormones, changing brain. Kelly said, Kendra, totally agree, hormone palooza. And I just loved how you said they knew when mom was well, baby was well. Yeah, super important.
Yes, indeed. And so you guys you're getting the analogy of it, and you're getting the essence of what matrescence is. And I feel like if somebody would have pulled me aside instead of touching my belly, but would have pulled me aside and had said, hey, friend, you are going to go through this amazing life transition. And remember how confusing and wobbly adolescence was? It's coming back. Like, that's going to be your reality. And it's going to feel awkward, and it's going to feel hormonal palooza, and it's going to feel all body changes, right? It's going to feel a lot of those same insecurities, or just, growth experiences are going to be what you're going to experience. I wish someone would have said that to me, because that would have made my ride a lot easier to say, in this wobbly moment, in this motherhood journey, this is normal. This is normal. And the way that we help each other, again, each other being our best medicine, is to have these conversations and to share the deep, dark things of motherhood as much as we share the positive, uplifting Pinterest or Instagram or, all of those kind of more manufactured highlights reel that we see often. And I feel like we often compare our low points in the day to those highlights reel that we're seeing on Instagram of other mamas. So today, hopefully we can do more of that sharing, more of that pulling each other aside and whispering, this is the reality of it, and talk more about these common, but not normal. They're not things that we need to accept. They're things we can do about. So we'll talk we'll just jump right in then, and I will share my screen again. So question number 1, if you have something to jot down on or put it in your brain, or you can type it in the chat box, that'd be great. Here's our first question. What percentage of women report experiencing pain during sex 18 months after having their baby? Sorry, one of my children's going outside, so I'm making sure they're not doing anything bad. It's part of motherhood at home these days, right? So what percentage of women report experiencing pain during sex? I figure we'll start with sex, because if we just go there right in the first, that will break down any barriers, hopefully, and we'll just get right into it. And I know you have pelvic floor therapists here, so I'm so excited for that contribution as well. But this is the number is from a study that was recently done, 2015 in Australia. So if you want to, oh goodness, that turned out a little funny. There should be a 4th number there. So I should have checked these. Sorry, guys. So 6%, 12%, 24%, or the last is 36%. Or you could just say greater than 24%. It kind of gets there. So which of those numbers do you think it is? So I'll give a couple seconds, because I think sex is also one of those things that people don't pull you aside and kind of go, hey, this is what sex might feel like afterwards, or this is how you might feel about sex afterwards. All right, so everybody kind of got their numbers in, and here's our answer. So 24% of women. The remarkable thing about this study, and why I like to talk about it, is because nearly 9 in 10 women experience pain the first time they have sex after childbirth. So like, if that's you, that's normal. Like, it is normal to have that. And that is part of the kind of getting back into your body experience of that. So 18 months later, to still be kind of experiencing that seems a little wild, doesn't it? It's like, what is that all about? And so if you got it right, go ahead and give yourself a point. And then if you want an extra point, we have another opportunity. Go ahead and name another pelvic related negative side effect that some women experience after birth. So you have the baby, and then something's going on in your pelvic region, and you're going, oh my goodness, what is this? It's a negative side effect potentially of after having a baby that you feel in your body, in your pelvic region. So go ahead and drop those in the chat box. I'm going to stop sharing and take a look. So I see we have incontinence, 2 of those. And so that could be urinary incontinence. How many people, you don't have to raise your hand, but if you jump and you pee, or you got a bladder that's a bit too full and you sneeze and a little bit leaks out sometimes, those are things that I think that we kind of joke about. And I think it's great that we joke about them, because that gets it out in the open, provides some levity to it. But that urinary incontinence, it is common for women, but it is not normal. I know, I love your face there. So it's like, but it's true. Like, so many of us experience this. We have prolapse, organ prolapse. That's definitely another one that Robin, thank you. I love that the pelvic floor therapists are like, yes, let's talk about this more now, throw them all in. And so prolapse could be any one of you have your 3 beautiful organs. I'm not going to go into it, but you have your bladder, you have your going too fast, uterus, your bladder, and then your colon. Those 3 beautiful organs that are inside. This is your pelvic bowl that I'm showing kind of on the side angle. And those 3 organs balance beautifully. They're made to balance on one another. And then what happens in the prolapse is if you're maybe lifting things like too heavy, like baby plus a car seat, I was guilty of that, or things that are a bit more than your body's ready to take, that can kind of squish down because you don't have the muscles to be able to, they're not yet ready to carry that load. And so that pelvic prolapse or organ prolapse can then cause additional things. And often that doesn't even show up until you get into your time of menopause, right? Because our estrogen leaves in menopause. And so when our estrogen leaves, it's kind of like the shocks in the car, if you will, like going over those bumps. Until menopause, you kind of have those shocks, which is all the beautiful estrogen in there that helps keep those organs beautifully in place. And then you lose the estrogen, we get more wrinkles in our face, and the rest, same thing happens in our pelvic region. And that can then all of a sudden, here in menopause, we're experiencing something that if we pulled the thread, it's actually from lack of rest in that postpartum time period.
Oh my gosh, Elizabeth. No. I'm like freaked out now. I'm like, oh dear.
You're totally blowing my mind.
I know. Menopause is going to be interesting.
It's going to be great. And yeah, it's going to be great. But I mean, and the good news about that is, and we have plenty of them on the call, feel free to unmute yourself. We have pelvic floor therapists all around the valley, right? And that is their job. In most other first world countries, pelvic floor therapy is a normal part of your rehab after a baby. Like I always say, I've had 2 knee surgeries, and my rehab plan for my knee surgeries was like, do this, don't do this, do this, you know, and all this stuff, rest, da, da, da. I have a baby, and they're like, see you in 6 weeks, you know, and you're like, but like this, come on, help me out. So I just want to encourage strongly, if you're experiencing any of the muscle weaknesses and pain, the pelvic or tailbone pain, the incontinence, like any of the things that are listed in the chat or more that's not listed there, those are common, but they are not normal. They're not things you just have to live with for the rest of your life. So I'm going to pause there. I would love for anybody to share whatever reactions, thoughts, or ideas they want to at this point.
Not to put you guys on the spot, but Kelly and Joanne have some good points in the chat. You don't have to speak it out loud if you don't want to.
You want to read them, Sarah?
Are you okay with that, Kelly? Joanne?
So
do you want to?
I'll keep it very brief, but as someone who definitely has symptoms of postpartum depression, I was dealing with severe incontinence issues, both bladder and bowel, after having my son. He was born with forceps, and his whole body came out in one push because he was not doing well with his heart rate. So I had severe incontinence to the point where now I have a neurostimulator permanently implanted in my butt cheek. So having incontinence to that extent and being bedbound and basically locked to my bathroom, I completely lost my sense of self. I had no identity outside of that. It was total tunnel vision. And it was really difficult. So pelvic floor therapy was a lifesaver. And what's really frustrating is when I went to see the OB that delivered my baby at my 6-week appointment, I was just shooed out of the office. Granted, it's COVID, but there really was no focus on outside of, I'm not actively bleeding, sure, tissues are healing, but this has got to go somewhere further than that. I'm having these awful things happen, and to just slap the label of postpartum depression and go, you need therapy, go get it. It's like, well, can we think about everything that's going into it? Of course I do, because how would you feel if you were having accidents in your pants all the time and you didn't even know? That's what was happening with me. And I just think it's a whole area that isn't really talked about the way that it should be. And I don't know, maybe it's a lack of education and schooling, or because it is still so taboo. But I mean, if you're an OB, that's your wheelhouse. So why is it not made to be common knowledge for everyone, not just expecting mothers, but just women in general, when we learn about the reproductive system, but also for our spouses, for our partners to know what we're going through? Why is that not discussed more? That was my big thing. I didn't understand why it was some taboo topic until I got into my pelvic floor therapy office. And then all of a sudden it was like, we can talk about it. But outside of that, no one wants to hear it.
Wow.
And that's such a shame because there's so many missed opportunities for feeling, okay, I'm not alone. Then this is something that has a fix. But I didn't know that. That was my experience.
Wow.
Thank you for being so raw and honest and vulnerable with us. I really appreciate it because I think that everything you said is spot on. I don't want to take over, but I just thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely, Kelly. Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, it's so true. And I bet as you say your words, that is ringing true for so many other women that are here and those that are even not, that would just gain so much more. This is normal. Like this is common, but not normal. And there's something I can do about it. Yeah. Robin, were you going to say something? I saw you came off mute.
Oh, I didn't want to step over your wonderful presentation either, but I was almost getting teary-eyed. Maybe I need more sleep. But just because I can feel Kelly's like passion for it and explaining what she went through. And so many women go through that. And I just wanted to say thank you, Kelly, because it's vulnerable to get on and to be like, this is what I went through. And so many people can, go through it. But I know, Elizabeth, you're probably going to speak a little bit to the fact that it's really, I made a comment in the chat, but Elizabeth's really good at speaking to how our healthcare system as a whole is really a bit behind in these things in the United States. So I'll just kind of leave it at that. But yeah, thank you, Kelly. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. I just think that, I mean, looking in the chat, like you're definitely not alone in this. And I mean, as Robin, I'm just echoing what she said, and I'm just going to touch a slight bit more, and then we're going to shift over topics unless we want to stay here a bit longer to explore it. But yeah, I mean, I have a friend that is American, but she is over in Germany, and she was like, hey, had her babies, checking in with her. She's like, right, I'm off to go to my group pelvic floor class. And I was like, group pelvic floor therapy? Like, how does this work? But she was like, no, this is what we all do. And so they go, and pelvic floor therapy isn't always all about, I think people are hesitant to go because they think like, oh, I don't want someone putting their hand up in my vagina. Like that's their envision of what it is, right? It doesn't always have to be that way. So so much of it is just breath work at the beginning, like right after baby. It's just getting those deep breaths back in. And then you have simple exercises that can start to engage your transverse abdominis. And there's so many more things on the pelvic floor health buffet than just an internal examination. So if you haven't already checked out pelvic floor therapy, and even if you're not experiencing major issues, like it is a normal thing to go be checked by a pelvic floor therapist, especially if you want to be active or especially if you just don't feel quite right. That's normal. Shall we touch a little bit on some? I don't want to miss the things in the comments either, because I'm very grateful for people putting comments in there. So I see Joanne's comment of, why did my OBGYN never talk about any of this? It feels like something that should have been in the wheelhouse, and Robin kind of spoke to this, but you're right, the OBGYNs, like a lot of times, and I'm not dogging on OBGYNs, but like medical systems, like we want to be in and out, right? And so they kind of feel that their job is to get the baby out. Once the baby's out safely, it's like, okay, see you later. And so I feel like this 6 weeks after this 4th trimester is actually that time of recovery and the rest, that if you look at the obstetrician and gynecologist, like the college requirements, they say that we need to optimize this time frame. This is a recognized and known deficiency in our medical system. And so it's something that we as moms, and like, so this is what you say, like when you're coming up to your friend who's pregnant, hey, you want your pelvic floor therapist to check you for diastasis recti. And if you had any sort of stitches or any sort of issues in your vaginal or perineum region in that birth, they need to do a visual inspection. They need to check that, and they need to refer you to a pelvic floor therapist. So what you tell them is like, this can happen. It may not, but it can. And you should ask your OBGYN, because that's how we're going to get the system to change to get that. Any pelvic floor therapists, do you have anything else you want to add to that in terms of things that they should be asking from their OBGYNs at that 6-week or ideally prior to 6-week visit?
Hi, it's Amy. Same as everybody, like not wanting to overstep your amazing presentation. We have a whole report on our website of what to expect from pelvic PT. And unfortunately, it's still at the space where women have to advocate for themselves. That's just where we're at. And so trying to provide, I know Robin, Jill, all of us are very passionate about providing resources for women to know what's normal, what's common, what the difference is, all of those kinds of things, what to ask. But yeah, at this point, women unfortunately either have to like kind of be really pushy with their providers or just Google and search and ask friends themselves. And it definitely doesn't all include vaginal work. So I'm really glad you brought that up. We definitely treat whole body. And even when pelvic floor work is needed, obviously it's always up to the client to say yes or no to that. And it's not every session. And anyway, but I just think that if women would, I guess they're really just going to have to ask for information and referrals themselves and insist that their OBs write prescriptions for pelvic physical therapy. And unfortunately do a lot of their own research on what that involves and who's available in their area. But I know, you know, even when people call our office, if they need somebody closer to home, or like Robin and I refer to each other all the time because she's Mesa, I'm Northwest Valley, Jill's kind of right in the middle. So that's been great. So yeah, we try to help them find the best fit for them. And we offer a free consult for that. I'm not sure if the other girls do too, that can chime in, but just because people don't know what pelvic PT is or what to expect or if they need it or how we help or any of that stuff. So it's a lot to keep working on the education front.
Thank you, Amy, so much for adding that. And I don't feel like you guys are stepping on the presentation at all. This is what we want. We want give and take. We want our community. We want our mom support ecosystem to be all together united. And so this is exactly what I want. So thank you. And Amy, I would love it if you could drop a link in the chat box to that resource document that you have. I mean, why should we be doing research when you've already done it for us? And so maybe like when you have your pregnant friend who is going to, you're going to their baby shower, or you're sending them something for the baby shower in these COVID days, maybe you like fold that little piece of paper up in the card that Amy's link, right, of all these resources that you can do and say, tuck this away for after, or, you know, whatever your encouraging note is of this, to kind of break open that space of what could be considered a taboo topic, as Kelly called it. So I love that. And thank you. Yeah, Joanne was just going to ask for the link. I was like, anytime I hear resources, I'm like, give it. Because yeah, even if you guys live in a different area than Amy or Jill or Robin or any of the other ones, Jenny, myself, we can always get you the help you need. I constantly am keeping my resource list. So if you ever need anything, you can reach out to me about resources after this. So too, and I was scanning the chat box too. I think we kind of have covered everything in there. Jenny or Sarah, do you see anything that we need to spend, or you would like us to spend time on before we kind of switch to question number 2?
Oh, I think you're doing great.
Okay. All right. So let's see, question number 2. We're switching off from sex and we're going to go into, oh, that's question number 1. All right, here we go. Question number 2. Where does your lochia flow, which is your vaginal bleeding, come from during the postpartum time? So I'll repeat that one more time. And again, in the chat box, this is a short answer, so just throw your guess in there. Where does your lochia flow or your vaginal bleeding come from during that postpartum time? So that's the blood flow that comes after baby, whether you have a C-section or vaginal birth, you're gonna have it, and it extends for, you know, I think in pelvic floor therapists could say this better, but I think it's up to like 2 weeks to about 6 weeks is the range of time period that people experience this blood flow. So go ahead, throw those ideas in the chat. And I'm gonna give you a hint. All right, so here's my hint. That's my hint. Can anyone guess, what am I hinting at here? Go ahead and unmute yourself and tell me what you think I'm hinting at. This is a paper plate. This is my abdominal region that I've just had a baby, and I've had a placenta that has been expunged after the baby, right? I've given birth to my placenta, and then I have a placenta wound site. This is the size of the wound, the placenta detachment site. So here we go. I'll stop sharing so you can get the full effect. This, if you're on speaker mode, this is the size of your wound immediately after birth. So, I mean, like this is my boobs here. This is like down below my belly button. That is the size. And so how many of us would we wish our partners would have known that this is the size of our wound? If this wound was outside of our bodies, would anyone be expecting us to run to Target to pick up diapers? I mean, seriously, right? And so,
or clean or make food or like even do anything on our own.
Exactly. I mean, if you came home with a wound this size, how would your partner react, right? You would be doing nothing for days, weeks, until it was getting smaller and smaller. And so that's what those afterbirth contractions are all about, right? They're taking that wound, just like if you had to injure, you would apply pressure, right? Your afterbirth contractions are actually making that wound smaller and smaller. And so I'm loving the comments in there too. And so with that, like, that's the importance of rest. That is why this 4th trimester period is still part of our healing and recovery. That's the vulnerability of this period, is that we have a wound this size inside our body and people don't recognize it. And so it's just like, I love to share that because, again, hey, pregnant person, don't expect to just bounce back after this, right? Rest, slow down, let this start to heal. And then the question becomes like, how do I know if I'm doing too much, right? Like, because how do I know if I'm starting to rip my wound open? And you'll know because you'll see an increase in your lochia flow. Like, it truly is that simple. And so as you're healing, as you're trying to like adjust from I had a baby to now I'm kind of trying to get back into my life, to really like tune into your body and to check your blood flow. And if you start to see an increase, or you see like, I feel like a gush of like in your body, that is a good indicator of you're doing too much. Like, back off, rest, relax. Like, again, talking about what you wish your OBGYN would be telling you, come on, right? This is it. So yeah, so it is, I love Robin's comment there, says it's not about the fear, it's about the education. It's like, if we know this, and this is why I love to have the education period, especially for pregnant mamas ahead of time, is I like to be able to whisper those things to them in my workshops, to be able to say, if you know better, you can choose better, because our society, again, isn't appreciating this huge identity transition in addition to the physical recovery that we're going through. And so it's a big deal. So Jenny, eek, and the clots. Yeah. I'm gonna pause there. Reactions. I can't do this all alone. Come on, ladies, help me out.
If I can, I want to just interject here briefly. I was always worried because, we don't know what's normal. They send you home with these like giant boat pads, and you're like sitting on an inner tube basically, and they're like, don't, if you have a clot bigger than XYZ, whatever, go, you need to call your OB. And I'm like, is this even a clot? I don't even know. Everything's red. The bathroom is a disaster. I'm like, I don't even know what's what anymore. I don't even know what this icicle pad business is supposed to be. And let alone ask my husband to like stick a pad in the freezer. Like, he'd be like, oh, you want me to do what? Like, and no offense to my husband, right? But he would have done anything for me. But like, I think we get sent home not knowing any of this. And then we are living in that fear. Like, I love that Robin is, putting that out there. Like, it isn't about fear. It shouldn't be about fear. But unfortunately, in the state that we're in right now, not Arizona, but in general, we don't have anything but fear because nobody's talking about it. Nobody's going to, or leaving that little note, right? Like, and yeah, I need the note. I want the note. I wanted the note, you guys. I'm going to start putting notes in people's mailboxes. You want to like make
a little weird, Sarah? You might want a little more personal interaction.
You know what? Don't thwart my efforts. No. What, like, okay, they have like mindfulness cards. Like, can we have like pelvic floor health cards.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
You
love,
know?
I see some questions in the chat too about like who knows about this? Who could have told me about this, or who can tell me about this? And some birth doulas might know, but not all. There are postpartum doulas, which some postpartum doulas might know, but not all. Your OBGYN or your midwife will know, but again, like it's not necessarily something that during your trimester visits they bring up, you know. And so this is why I'm such a huge proponent for fourth trimester education, is because I think we need to know it and we need to share it with all those who are going to be traversing this matrescence time period, to help bring this alive and to kind of push for that in effect. And I promise I will keep pushing to try to train doulas and try to train other folks as well, because it is so helpful. Because if you know, then there's less fear, just like both of you alluded to. Indeed. Anyone else have reactions or comments?
I was just going to comment that, you know, some of what fourth trimester Arizona does is trying to bring this up so that like your friend next door knows it, right? Like if your friend next door is like, hey, did you have any of those massive clots? Have you like, right? Are you still, why are you out? Get back in bed. Don't you know it's this big? You know, that they would be able to refer you to say, hey, Robin's over here, Amy's over here, or, you know, why don't you go here? I think a lot of it is just, if we bring back all this knowledge and we start to kind of demand it from our providers, it'll change, but it's got to come from us. Yeah.
Or the next time that your friend has had a baby and you're like, okay, I'm gonna give you a meal, and they're like, no, you don't have to do that. You're like, yes, your wound is the size of a paper plate. I am bringing you a meal. You are not doing a thing. And so like this is part of that, as we try to like downplay our need for support or help in this time frame, to like explain, actually, yes, we do. We all need support in this time frame, because it is a time of recovery, you know, in addition to the 24/7 needs of your baby that is crying for you all the time, right? Yeah, I love this.
Well, and I think even just on like public connections level, you know, when you're out at Target and you see a clearly postpartum mom with her itty bitty, you can say in all kindness and with, you know, very kind motivation, say like, hey mama, like you're doing such a good job. I just want to encourage you, slow down, like you're still healing. Is there anything that, you know, you can delegate to somebody else that can help you? You know, just those little words of encouragement go a long way, especially the earlier postpartum you are, I feel like. So. Yeah. You're muted, Elizabeth. Back up. I love this graphic. Start over.
So I think what I was saying was, there was one more graphic I wanted to show, because I do think a picture is worth 1,000 words. And so I wanted to share this. In our fourth trimester education classes, one of our alumni is an anatomical artist. And so one of my frustrations was, when you actually look through anatomical art, is really, really, really difficult to find any picture of this third phase, this immediately after birth phase. And so what you're looking at is a non-pregnant body that then goes to about a 40-week body is the next one. And then you're looking at that immediate postpartum body. And then you're looking about 40 days later. And so if you look at like the changes, like it's about 40 weeks to get from non-pregnant to fully pregnant, right? And then you look, and you're not exactly back to a non-pregnant body. I'm not trying to dispel that, or I'm not trying to say that, but to get to your new non-pregnant state at the end of that, it's 40 days. Like your body is that miraculous. In 40 days, it can go ahead and shift things back to a new non-pregnant state. And so like, if you think about the rest needed, right? You think about, if we want to cultivate ourselves as the most beautiful flower, the most beautiful version of ourselves, like wildflowers, even here in the desert. I mean, goodness, I can scatter seeds in my garden here, and quite strangely, they sometimes will still grow, right? And they will sprout, and they will still be a flower. And you like, if you think about that, like that's even in the hardest conditions, our body or our nature can keep life going, right? But if we want to cultivate the most beautiful version of ourselves, we want to give ourselves the right conditions for nature to do its job, right? So we want the rest. We want the right nutrition. We want that. I mean, we want all these things, which often are difficult for us to attain in our society or our culture because we don't get enough support. Like, this is not all on us. I'm not, if anyone's hearing this as like, you should be, that is not it. We, our society, this is a time to be cared for, and so you can rest. So others should be giving you the meals and helping you with childcare, those sorts of things as much as you can. And in a time of COVID, I know this is even more challenging. I get it. And so we got to do the best we can with what we got. But I think this picture here just really can give us that sense of placenta detachment site and the amount of change that is going on inside of our bodies. Yeah, cool. All right. Question 3, chat box again. So go ahead, if you want to do, instead of writing them all out, because that's kind of long, for whatever reason, when I was doing this in the program, it wasn't letting me put like number 1 or A, B, C, and D. Feel free to do A, B, C, and D in your answers, but you'll order the following 4 mental health disorders from the most prevalent or most to least commonly experienced in the United States. So you want to do the one that's the most experienced. So if you thought maternal postpartum depression is most experienced, you're going to pop that up in the highest. So A, you might write, and then comma, whatever the other ones are. Postpartum psychosis is the next one there, baby blues, and the postpartum partner postpartum depression. So take a moment, I'll stop talking so you can think, and try to order those from most experienced to least experienced. Awesome. I'm so bad with silence. So let's see. I think a number of you got your answers in. And if you, for the last one, if you got it correct, give yourselves a point for that and your bonus point from the first one. So you could be up to 3 points at this point. This will be before point number 4, if you want to get it. And here is the answer. The order is, so it would have been C, or number 3 is the first one, baby blues. Then the next would be A or 1, which would be maternal postpartum depression. And then you have part that was number D or 4 would be postpartum depression. And then the last one is your postpartum psychosis. And you can see the percentages next to each of the categories there. So baby blues, anyone want to just kind of give a brief overview of what baby blues kind of feel like or felt like for them? Since 80% of us experience it, we probably all have gone through it. I can talk from my own experience.
Crying.
Yeah, crying. It felt like no reason.
Or every reason.
Yeah. Yeah, epic crying. Just, yeah. Yeah. The baby was crying. I was crying. We were all crying. Dad was clueless. All of that. Yeah.
It's that hormone palooza, right? That's what we're feeling. And so you feel weird and sad about all the changes in the isolation is what Joanne had popped in there. Thanks, Joanne. Any other thoughts? Feel free to pop those in. I'd love to hear, or unmute yourself. So what?
Elizabeth, is there anything you can say about where postpartum rage fits into that spectrum?
Yep. So that is often, from a mental health perspective, they will put that under a postpartum anxiety. Rage is often under the anxiety piece of it, and everybody's mental health challenges in this time present differently. So rage is definitely a symptom, and I love that you point that out, Amy, because some people are feeling that anger, that like constant, but they don't know where it's coming from, and it's hormonally driven in these hormone dump times that we have.
Yeah, I felt like I moved from like that sadness, just uncontrolled, like crying and stuff, and then into that postpartum rage type of realm, not all the time, but I would just kind of like go back and forth, like I'm so overwhelmed and I'm mad at everybody and I just want everybody to leave. And, like it would be easier if ... like pretty much fill in the blank with anything not involving humans, besides maybe my baby half the time. I don't know. That's what it felt like for me. And it lasted way, way longer than, I was aware it could. So like my poor children bore the wrath of their mom for, 3 years or whatever. 4 years, maybe still some to this day.
Thank you, Sarah. Yep.
Yeah.
One I had recently read, is it true at all, Elizabeth, in your research or expertise that, and I mean, it sounds like what your experience was, Sarah, the postpartum rage can show up later.
Mhm.
I mean, any of these can show up. Like
Mhm.
you might be fine, you might be fine. It might be just baby blues. You might just be a little sleep deprived, and something like extra sleep deprivation or extra pain that can show up for a different reason even puts you kind of quote unquote over the edge.
Mhm.
What can anybody speak to that? Specifically, I had read something stating that postpartum rage often shows up later. So even more than there's already way too much misinformation and confusion about postpartum mental health. But that one is even more puzzling or unknown because it shows up later. Is that true, or in your knowledge or experience, anybody?
So I'll speak quickly to that. I don't know specifically on rage. So if someone knows specifically on rage, but I will say that the maximum, the time where women experience the maximum postpartum mood disorder, so rage would be bundled under that. So this is anxiety, depression, OCD, all of those are all bundled. The maximum time of experiencing that is 3 years postpartum. 3 years postpartum. So the fact that our society quantifies maternal mental health issues within 1 year of the birth of our child is wrong, because there's evidence to show that these hormonal fluctuations and the mental health challenges that come along with it extend far beyond that 1 year time period.
I want to just bring up in the chat, Robin says that she didn't connect her earlier symptoms. And so I can totally agree with that, because I feel like, you know, you're in the thick of it. You're too close to the situation. And it took like being away from my family for times, you know, periods of time, not like I've left my family, but, you know, just having blocks of time where I'm not with them, and talking to people about like what they were experiencing, to myself connect the issues emotionally and other issues as well, that it was actually like anxiety and depression, and it was tied to that postpartum time frame. I don't think I would have pieced it together if I hadn't have talked to people about the normalcy in some of that. Not that what I experienced was normal, not that it didn't need intervention, but I don't think I would have come to that realization on my own, for what it's worth.
And Sarah, when I experienced anxiety, it was the same sort of thing. Like I didn't know I was in it until I was more or less out of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I'm just going to piggyback off what Kelly just posted, because I completely agree. I had so many medical things happening in the first 8 months, a year that my baby was born, that I didn't have time, and I didn't recognize if I had it. And my doctor even said to me when I did like the checklist at 6 weeks, she was like, I don't even like, it's not even on my radar if you could have postpartum depression, because I had so many health issues happening that like I didn't even get to deal with that until after like a year later.
Wow.
So
And I agree. I think this is also true for NICU parents, because I know with my twins were in the NICU for like almost 2 months, and it was kind of the same thing. Like you're too busy, you're too caught up in all the things that are happening around you that you don't have time to be introspective and think beyond the interventions that are happening with your kid or kids in my case.
Yeah,
I think that's really true. And if mom's having those interventions, same thing.
totally agree.
Thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that too. And Sarah, thank you for sharing. Jenny, you're gonna add on?
No, I think, you know, my youngest is 6 now, and it's only been in the last year or so that I can actually recognize how significant my postpartum anxiety was, because I remember being so afraid. Like the whole COVID thing has triggered me in a way that like I recognize how much better I am, if that makes sense. I remember being so afraid of my kids getting sick. Like I was like, yeah, I was like hand sanitizing all the time. Like I would have these moments of panic about it. And I was like, well, but you function fine. So you must be fine, right? Like you're just fine. But when you're outside of it and you realize that, wow, I'm not doing that anymore, it's kind of epic to see how much was there. So yeah.
So I'm going to unmute myself before I talk again. Thank you, Jenny, for sharing that too. I feel like all of our words, everyone that has shared, I bet there are echoes of many more. And I see in the comment box, more people sharing that they had this experience. And so this is one of those common but not normal, again, things that it happens to so many of us, that like if you could whisper to that pregnant woman's ear of like 80% of us, I'm going to pop up the statistics again just so that you can have those in front of you as I'm talking. So 80% of you are going to feel this really, really wobbliness. And the reason why is because day 3 roughly, and this is the part that you can tell them, which is useful. Day 3 after having a baby, we as women experience the largest hormone dump that any human ever experiences in their entire lifetime. So day 3, you go from riding those pregnancy hormones to like shoom, straight down. And that is part of it. So that it's great to be able to kind of share that with a pregnant woman, that like, okay, whenever you have the baby, day 3, give yourself so much more grace, because this hormone dump is going to happen. And it may not be exactly day 3, maybe day 2 or day 4, we're all a bit different, but it's going to be around this time frame where we get this huge dump. After day 3, the next one is week 3. So week 3 is the next dump that we have where our hormones are shifting. And after that, it's month 3. So if you remember the 3s, it's day 3, week 3, month 3. Each of those times, like we recommend in our workshop that mamas have someone like have it on their to-do list after baby's born to put on their calendar at day 3, week 3, month 3, a reminder for themselves. Or like if you have a friend who has a baby, put on your calendar day 3, week 3, month 3 to check in with them. Because those are going to be around the timeframes that they're going to be super wobbly. And if they're like planning to go back to work on week 3, that's going to be really challenging for most people, right? So if you can encourage them to kind of address that, fine. If you can't, then just be there for them, right? Be there to give them the extra support and extra grace. So remember the 3s. And then the other ones that are kind of situational dependent is when you stop breastfeeding. And that change of stopping breastfeeding, that's going to affect your hormonal composition as well. And then the other one that can affect, and some people are really sensitive, is birth control. If you start up birth control again, so like those 5 times, day 3, week 3, month 3, and then the 2 situational ones when you stop breastfeeding, and then also if you go on hormone control or birth control again, those 5 can really just mess you over. And so those are times to be able to like whisper to your friend, or to look out for another mama to help her out, or to apply to yourself, like if you're in those stages. So I'll pause there as I put up our statistics here, just in case you're visual, to kind of show you that you're not alone. Like I do love Postpartum Support International. Like so many women experience this. You are not alone. And the best part about any maternal mental health challenges at all is with support, with help, we all get better. Like there is no, this is a long-term thing. With help, we all get better. And that's one of the best news I can share about maternal mental health. I'm going to pause there. And if anyone else has something they want to share.
Can I get you to pop out of this mode just for a sec? Okay. All right. Sorry. I thought someone was trying to come in the wait list, but it's done. There you go. Go back in.
So yeah, feel free. I'm just going to accentuate. We talked about 1 in 5. That's the very first block that you're seeing here. Up to 1 in 5 women will suffer from some sort of mental health disorder, like postpartum depression or anxiety or OCD. OCD is like less than 1 in 5, sorry. And so knowing that 1 in 5 people, that's a lot of us. Less than 15 people receive treatment because we have so much stigma around mental health, and the fact that people feel like it's some sort of weakness, or we as mom, we can do it all. And if we're struggling, that's some sort of implication that we're doing something wrong, which is not at all the truth. Again, the we of us, there's studies that have been done from the 1980s that show that societies, traditional societies specifically, that have cultural norms of caring for moms in that 4th trimester so they can rest, so they can, have that placenta detachment site go down, so they can give themselves grace in those day 3, week 3, month 3. The statistics in front of us we're seeing here drop significantly. So the cure for mental health challenges is actually support. It's finding your people, finding your group. We are our own best medicine. And then the third piece here is the fact it happens in pregnancy too. It's not just a postpartum issue, like it gets tagged. And then the last one, I think this is kind of the most surprising for some people, is 1 in 10 dads actually experience this. And if mom is having some challenges, dad is way more likely to also be experiencing challenges, or vice versa. It's a family issue. Okay, so that's where I'll pause.
Yeah, the dad thing is relevant for me because I didn't think that was even possible. And my husband was really depressed when my second child was born. We had just moved, like a lot of things changed at once. And I was mad at him. I was so angry with him for being depressed. I was like, I need you to take care of me. I don't have any more room to take care of anyone. But yeah, I ended up sending him to counseling. We probably should have both gone. But yeah, that was really shocking to me. Now I'm like, oh, of course. Yeah, I get it. But at the time it felt, it brought out a lot of postpartum rage. There we go.
Well, I just want to say, I think too,
Yeah.
I think a lot when I hear women tell their birth story, we're actually trying to get more dads to come in with their wives for either the discovery session or that first eval. Because I think a lot of men are able to shake it off's a horrible phrase, but kind of move past it. But some aren't. When you think the stories I hear of women's births and the trauma that the men witness, even like mine went fine and like at the end of the day, but like the screaming, how are they supposed to have, wow, that's making me emotional all of a sudden. Wow. My kids are 12 and 15. I had no idea this was in here. But how are they supposed to have any awareness of whether or not I'm going to be okay? Whether or not their wives are going to be okay, whether or not the babies are going to be okay. Like there's just blood and screaming, and no one, as much as the women aren't served, nobody even talks to the dads about any of this. As much as we're all bringing up how lacking postpartum care is for women, men, it doesn't even exist. Never mind, is it talked about? Never mind, did they get it? Never mind all the other fallout. And so many layers to all of this.
Yeah.
And apparently I have some to deal with.
Oh,
and maybe ask my husband about.
Thank you for sharing, Amy. And I think
Yeah.
the beauty in sharing it is I think that what you just released there, I give full witness for everything you experienced. I see you for all of that. And I see you for your concern for your partner in that too, because that's a huge part of it. And there's so much to be said for birth story medicine and so much to be said for sharing what went down. Things don't always go the way we planned, and we are not in control of it. So thank you.
I would agree, because I feel like we have come so far, right? Like right now we're all together as women helping, supporting each other. There was no one or anyone that I could even find resources to help Mark. So it's definitely underserved. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, we actually have one of our volunteers who does amazing work. He does all of our videos. He has been talking a lot about this, how he feels like dads need to be brought into the conversation, how they can have conversations about this kind of stuff and what it is to be a dad, after you've experienced all this, what it is to be a dad. So yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely a piece that and hopefully as we start to really acknowledge all of this and, take care of each other as women, we'll notice them more dads, more partners will want to be there. I know that when we were doing in-person gatherings, we actually had quite a few dads that were joining us. And I think that now that we're doing online, maybe we're just not finding them, or maybe dad is holding the kids while mom is on the call. But yeah, I totally agree. It's a big missed opportunity.
Yeah, I like how you said, Elizabeth, that it's a family thing. Like, certainly there are single parents out there, but hopefully you have someone supporting you during your birth, and that person needs support afterwards just as much as mom does, maybe in different ways. And I feel like we talk so much about, even your first slide being the mom fading into the woodwork, right? And now that focus being on baby, but where was dad ever in this equation? Like, they're not just sperm donors, like they want to have a relationship with their partner and their baby. And it's, I think, even harder now during COVID too, because dads are not being allowed into maternal visits in the prenatal period. They're barely allowed in the hospitals, they're making them leave, or if they come, they have to stay and they can't leave. There's a lot of limitations now, more than there ever were, and still no support for those dads. And I think we put so much pressure on dads to be the breadwinner, right? Like, go out and make money and support your family. And these dads are just like being crushed under the weight of all these expectations and seeing their wives getting support, hopefully. And then they're just there in the background, always trying to stay strong and attempt to pick up any pieces that they're able to. So yeah, we definitely need to go give our partners hugs today.
Yeah, I love this. And so one of the things to also share as like a, hey, new mom, like this is something you can do, is encourage moms to share their birth story. Like, the best medicine, like when we go through it with our emotional experience of birth, we are, as anyone's been in like birth mind, like you're not in your right mind, you're in your birth mind as you're going through it. And part of what needs to happen for our healing afterwards is that logical side of our brain, which is the chronology of things, and the X happened and Y happened, and putting together all that math of it, that was gone while we were birthing. That was out of the room because that's not what we needed in that moment. But after the birth, that emotional side and that logical side, it needs to reconcile, needs to integrate. And so that's where conversations between partner and mom and doula, if they were there, or provider, to kind of piece together those logical pieces for mom afterwards. If you can encourage the families, or even you as a friend can say, hey, would you like to share your birth story to me? I would love to hear it. And to give space to hear that, and then to encourage them to have those conversations with their partners, you can really, that is hugely healing for mom to integrate the logical and the emotional. And it also helps kind of clear the air and get those partners involved, so that if there was trauma that they experienced, there's at least an opportunity to see that in their eyes or hear that in their voice, to know that that is something that we still have yet to tackle as a couple as we continue to move forward with this baby, by the way, who is demanding all of our attention and sleep. So yeah. Sarah, I want to be respectful of time. I know that you guys normally do something at the end. We have one more thing, but we can skip that for today and leave it for another time if you want. How would you like us to proceed here?
Do you want me to say
Jenny, would you like to? Yeah. I just saw your notes. So.
Yeah. I think we've done a lot of sharing, and I think that that's mostly what we want to do on this. So maybe it would be a good time to close out with another share if you'd like to do that. And I can pull us off of Facebook now. So we'll see you guys, Facebook friends. We're going to pull right off.